everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Two, where it's our show where we review things in the world of television, where today we are reviewing the first season of DC's Doom Patrol. It's been a very, very long time coming for me as a Doom Patrol reviewer. I have reviewed almost every single individual piece of Doom Patrol since Season 2, and I completely forgot I was supposed to review this before Season 4 started a year ago, which, in retrospect, that means because of the whole freaking year delay for the freaking second half of the Season 4. I should have been reviewing Season 2 now, but I was busy last year was pretty busy for me. I didn't really have time to fit in Doom Patrol, to be completely open and transparent with you. But here we are. Doom Patrol, the final episodes begin in a couple days from this video's posting. It's going to be very bittersweet. I've said a lot of goodbyes this year. I think I've run out of tears. I said goodbye to Nancy Drew. I said goodbye to Walker Independence, Perry Mason, Heel, sadly. I've lost a lot of good shows this year, and Doom Patrol is just going to be the latest on the list. I'm really hopeful next year's just new beginnings and like new shows that will continue on longer time periods than now. But, you know, I'm very glad Doom Patrol did at least get 4 seasons of television, where, considering the type of show this thing was, I was honestly concerned, like, if there was any freaking other network provider that wasn't DC directly, the show wouldn't even gone on for a season. Not because it's bad, but it's so weird. But the good thing, it's so freaking great at the same time. They balance so many freaking different things where it's a comic book show, yeah. It's a superhero show, yeah. But it's not a superhero show. It's not a traditional comic book show. It's something different. It's something more real and personal and, like, honestly, for some people, relatable. And it was kind of weird. And when I actually reviewed the first season way many years ago when I first started doing What's in the Tube in general as a show, and I was a little light on it in terms of, like, you know, my review on it. I was very basic because I didn't want to spoil anything, but this is the spoiler-filled review. After so many years, I can actually talk about it, and I'm like, oh my god, this show was like, rewatching it after 4 years removed from it, it was crazy. It really was. I distinctly remember, I think it was 2019. Yeah, 2018, 2019, when the show first started. And my usual co-host, that's not really on as much content anymore, George, he was, like, actually excited for the show because it was a very, like, E-lister comic book group from DC Comics. And they were getting their own show. And the cast was pretty great. You had Timothy Dalton, a very classically trained actor who has done decades and decades of, you know, film and television. You had Brendan Fraser at the very start of his resurgence in Hollywood, way before The Whale and all his Oscar glory that he got last year. Diana Guerrero, who has done a lot of shows, has been recurring in a bunch of shows beforehand, but, like, you know, this was, like, I think one of her first premiere roles as, like, you know, being front and center. Then you had like some well-knowns like Matt Bomer, and I'm gonna butcher their last name, April, the one who plays oh god, I'm already blanking on the names here. I really already am. Who plays Rita, Cyborg's actor, and you honestly got a really great cast character. And you have Alan Tudyk, who is the villain. And if you don't know about this, I love Alan Tudyk. He is such a phenomenal actor that I'm like, I know he has other shows out there. Why am I not signing up for them? It's like, he killed it in the season. But we'll talk more about that later. But just in general, this cast was so freaking good. They perform their roles so well. They become these characters. And by the end of it, it's like, you feel for these characters. You really do. Now, was there problems with this season? Not as much as I remember. I actually now am viewing this season more fondly than before. I think, you know, giving it some time to breathe, you know, as well as, you know, me being older, being more like, I've watched so many other shows since there, that going back to something that I already really enjoyed before, now it's like I enjoyed it even more. And that's kind of my one sentence summary of the whole season, where it's so freaking great. It really is. It's just a perfect balance of being a comic book show, but at the same time, like, actually dealing with some, you know, real world, you know, mental issues. They're you know, because they don't shy away from that, and they sewed it in so perfectly into the story, where I honestly forgot a couple twists. I really did. I think this information was much more comprehensible than before for me, because maybe my brain had developed a little bit, just a tad bit, not too much. But still, it was just such a great show. It really was. And I'm very sad that it's coming to an end, that I'll be starting its final run of episodes in a couple days. But to go able to just rewatch the massive season 1 that was 15 episodes. I completely forgot it was 15 episodes. It was like, how long is this show? Because I'm used to like comic book shows nowadays going under 13 episodes. Maybe in 6 or 8. But the fact that they got to 15 is like, ah, damn. Yeah, I wasn't really expecting that. I really wasn't. So with all that being said, before I actually get into like the spoiler-filled stuff, because I'm gonna spoil plenty of it. Again, I really thought this season was great. It really was phenomenal. Go check it out if you haven't yet. It's available right now on not HBO Max, on Max. So please go enjoy it. Please go binge it for your pleasure. It's such a really good treat. It really is. But yeah, so going into it, yeah, with this season, I didn't sign up for your DC Universe. If anyone remembers, 5 years ago, DC Comics, the entire company, decided to say, fuck it, we're making our own streaming service. But it's a very specific streaming service. It didn't have just movies and shows. It was also having comics, the animation stuff. It was supposed to be the designated home for all future DC content. Where at the time they had a big, they had big boom. They had their a Titan show that they redeveloped from TNT. They had this Doom Patrol show. They made Stargirl. They were making Harley Quinn. They also brought back Young Justice. So their original 5, I think it was 5 shows when they announced the platform. It was honestly like you had like something for everyone. You had a live-action adaptation of a very well-known group, a relatively unknown group. You had the return of an animation legend. You had a brand new adult-centric animated show. And you had something that's more traditional, but different. So it has something for everyone, and they put a lot of money into that platform. And they ended up saying, "Oof, we were not expecting to get, they dropped the ball hard. They really did. If it wasn't for there being already another platform in relation to them, I don't think these shows would have survived. I really wouldn't. But thankfully, all these shows had very healthy show lifespans, mind you. Harley Quinn's one of the biggest 6 DCs ever produced right now. So, with all that being said, to get back to Doom Patrol, again, when I first heard about the show, I wasn't even interested in it. I know they had a backdoor pilot of sorts in Titans where they brought in their version of Robot Man, Rita, Mr. Negative Man. But they didn't have. But their version of Niles was different. It was a completely different actor. And then for this show, it was the great and powerful Timothy Dalton. And eventually, I was like, you know what? I heard great things about it. I actually bought the DVD for cheaps. I want to say on Black Friday or some other avenue. I got it for cheap, so I picked it up. I watched it. Thought it was great at the time. Now going into this, like in general, both in terms of the past and now. This show was just, oh my god, like, what were you to expect from a show called from Doom Patrol? Like, what was it going to be about? And I think the way, they knew their story, the writers knew, there was absolutely, like, maybe like a 5% chance that any audience member, like, even the hardcore of comic book fan, would even know what the hell the Doom Patrol is. So they were able to, like, come at this with a fresh slate. I know the team in the comics is a little bit bigger than this one, so having them, like, control the cast and, like, to these characters, and then also bringing in the outside presence of Cyborg, who is a well-known character from, like, I think even like who's more recognizable. I guess at the time period you probably had Teen Titans as the animated series, as well as the brief appearance by Ray Fisher in Justice League. That managed to actually, like, okay, we know who Cyborg is, so they were able to, like, kind of use that as kind of like, an allure of like, hey, we got Cyborg. But I know you don't know the rest of these characters, but you're about to. So, for me going into this, like, the way that this story was a bit different, mind you. They could have taken this story a number of different directions, But instead they did, like, a pseudo-origin story where, like, it's not the full origin, but they're giving you, like, tidbit. And it's like the whole thing is like a mystery. Like, you really don't know what the next twist is going to be. You really don't know what's going to come over the next corner yet, because the primary Doom Patrol members are Nile Cauldron's, um, people that he's caring for. You have Rita Farr, who is an actress who was well known back in the 40s and 50s, but sadly suffered a mysterious mythological accident while shooting one of her films, and she had, gotten this weird abnormal power where if she's not kept in check, her entire form, her entire physical matter becomes like this gooshy mushy blob sort of thing. You had I forgot his name. So his name is Negative Man, but in the show he has a real name, obviously, of course. I forgot what his real name is. It's blanking for the life of me. He was a well-known pilot. He had a family. He also had a secret double life because he was a gay man in the closet. And when he was performing this very, risky mission, which he promised his, everyone that I'll come back from it. It's like, it's me. I'll come back from it. And then he doesn't come back. He gets hit by a mysterious entity in space, crashes down on Earth, but for somehow he's still alive. Somehow he survives all of that, but he's burned beyond, repair. He's burned beyond recognition. And this negative spirit, as mind you, it keeps him alive. It gives him the life force that he needs to stay alive and, to be able to operate. Then you have Jane, who is one of the many 64 personalities that exist in a woman's body. All these personalities have their own different traits. Majority of them are aggressive. Majority of them are majestic. And majority of them are just very, very random. But majority of them do also have their own superpower. They have some sort of ability that they can use once the persona is activated. Some can teleport. Some have very super straight. Some has powers of persuasion. Some has a love spell. You really don't know what you're going to get. It's a bargain chip. And then you have Cliff. Oh, Cliff. He's like, I love Cliff so much. I really do. Robot Man, well known. I think he was a NASCAR race driver in his prime, but he was not a perfect human being. And then accidentally, he dies in a car crash. And then, but his brain somehow survives. Somehow, only the brain is intact. So, with that in mind, it was enough to keep him able to rebuild it in a robot body, and that's kind of how we enter present day, where Niles Cauldron in 2019 is watching the four of them. They're cooped up in this house as part of their, hey, you have free board here, free food, free everything. Your only condition, you do our little therapy sessions, and also you cannot step out of this house without my permission. If I tell you stay put, stay put. So the story kind of begins where Jane returns after another stint in the outside world. Again, making the same deal of like, okay, you're back here. You did your thing. You gotta stay put. The chief, as they call him, Niles Cauldron, he has to go off on a little bit of a business trip. So he's leaving the team all by himself, in the house where, like, again, number one rule, do not leave the house. Just stay put. I'll be back. And what do our abandoned miscreants do? Our abandoned misfits do? They decide to completely ignore and decide to go out and venture into the world. Which, I will be completely honest with you, the whole aspect of, like, the misfits, like, kind of going outside, it's been so long since they had human interaction that they've been in the outside world. It's a bit cheesy, mind you. Like, Rita's, like, kind of like, doesn't know the concept of money, and she just assumes everyone would still remember her after 70 years, after just, disappearing, mind you. Cliff, not really having to, see anyone else since that's outside of this little group. Same with Negative Man. Jane is just kind of like, she does what she wants. She really does. Like, Jane is the primary persona. She's not the main persona. She's not the main one. That's a piece to know. She is the primary, but she's not the main. There's a reason for that. But that's the thing. The first episode is just trying to give you enough to work with, where, like, you understand the core fundamentals of the character. You don't get a whole episode based around them. You just kind of like the show, like, they'll pick apart their character stories as they go along. Which, again, it moves so naturally, it moves so perfectly, that eventually they realize their freaking mistake, and then eventually it kind of kickstarts the events of the series, where Rita accidentally kind of, loses her control over her powers. So that kind of creates a little bit of, like, kind of like local national attention on them, which causes an ancient deity, and not an ancient entity, but like an entity known as Mr. Nobody, played by the fantastic, the marvelous Alan Tudyk, who is like the Joker meets Deadpool. If that's the best way to describe it in terms of like, the popular characters. But he brings his own flair to it. He's just so crazy. He's so random. We even get a little origin story for him where like he sought to get power, so he went to this very, very, very radical scientist that actually fused him with like a lot of antimatter particles, and eventually he became this nobody force, aka Mr. Nobody. Niles knows what's happening. He's like, well, we're made. We're gonna have to leave, and like that's it. That's you guys want to stay with me? Okay, great. Like we're gonna leave the house now. And Cliff actually gaining a little bit of like sympathy. He's like, no, we have to go save the town. Like we fucked up. We need to go save it because some mystical portal opened up beneath it. So they need to go and face this threat. Big idea all around. Like this entire team just is full of stupid ideas. But that was the charm of the show where, like, again, they're not superheroes. They're not trying to be superheroes. They're just people with superpowers or abilities that is not normal that are stuck with it. And are these the right people that have these abilities? Absolutely not. I wouldn't trust any of them on any sort of given week with these powers. I really don't. But, Niles gets captured. That's where Cyborg gets introduced, where he needs to find Niles in order to find himself again. But once he realizes, oh, he's gone, he's been kidnapped, now he's going to have to throw himself at this new situation, kind of like taking over the lead for him, and trying to also Cyborg at the same time, having the a little bit more well-known origin story from the comics where he got into an accident when he was like 17 or 18 years old. His mom died, and his father had to reconstruct the little pieces that are left of it into a cybernetic body. But unlike the Justice League version, which was the more modern version at the time, where he's, I guess, 10%, it was just this part of his face that was, just still the human portion. The rest were like all cybernetics. This is more like in the comics where like, it's respectful. It's a little weird for me personally. Cause again, sadly I grew up with the 2003 version of the character from the cartoons, as well as the 2017 version of the movie. So for me, like, it was a bit weird to see like, clearly this is just a costume. Like in terms of like, this is just something, I'm not trying to insult it, but it's I know in the comics it is what it looks like, and when you adapt something to live action, it's gonna look a little weird because like you have real human skin. This isn't like just color and paint. This isn't it. So it was a little bit weird for me, mind you, but eventually I got used to it pretty quickly. But yeah, so eventually once he joins the team, and like that's when their entire adventures begin, trying to find Niles, but as well as discovering more about themselves, figuring out more of their revelations. And I just love the balance what they get. We're like, yeah, Mr. Nobody is the big bad for the season, but he's not there a lot. He is moving the plot along, literally and figuratively. He actually creates scenarios for the Doom Patrol to sidetrack them, only for the sake of being, to make them grow as characters so they can come into their senses to fight him. Which I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you have Niles. Like, and again, like, it goes more into depth as you go along, once you discover more and more, because, like, every episode builds a piece for another character, where every character has their own moment in the show, whether it's we slowly find out Mr. Negatives, and that's actually, before I get into that example, that's actually a good way to go into the characters themselves, where every character, like, you feel the seismic shift from the beginning to the end of the season. And honestly, I really respect them, mind you, and I'm just surprised of like, how well versed into the story it goes into, where starting with Mr. Negative, he is a man full of regrets. He's a man that, is always torturing himself, that as much as he's been giving kind of like this extension of his life, he doesn't feel happy because he lost his family, he lost the man he loves, he lost his entire life, and he wasn't able to fulfill it. Where, like, at least everyone got to, like, I guess besides Jane, but they all got to achieve their dreams briefly, where Cliff was a famous driver, Rita was a famous actress, Cyborg is a well-known superhero, and Mr. Negative, like, obviously, Negative Man, he knows some people know about him if you were in service with him, but like besides everyone, he wasn't like this well-known figure. But he had a life. He had a family. He had a man he loved, but he never was fully able to embrace that. Where like he wasn't able to fully choose between his wife and kids, or to choose the man that he loves. And you know, he kind of died for the rest of the world, not being able to fulfill to properly be able to, what's the word? What's the word for this? To be able to channel, to be able to like express that fully. He wasn't able to. So by the time he went, it's like, you know, it's always been about, you know, him torturing himself for every single day. We're like, okay, it's another day that I don't have my family, that I don't have the man I love, or I'm stuck in this house with a bunch of randos and a man in a wheelchair. Like, I'm stuck here. But then the more you get to realize it, the more you get kind of like, you know, because the negative spirit also has its own conscience, mind you. It doesn't talk, it doesn't speak, but it does express what it's feeling. We're like, it's not like at the beginning, it's assumed that the negative spirit is kind of like something negative to him, but it's like the only reason why it is what it is because it's always torturing himself. Larry, there we go. It's torturing. Larry is torturing himself. That's also torturing the spirit that's keeping him alive. So that's why their relationship hasn't been good. But as you progress through the season, Larry starts to begin to understand the true nature of his actions and, you know, his own, like, you know, mental situation. Then he's able to actually have a decent relationship with the spirit towards the end of the season, which. Again, like they actually were like in a way training their powers, so to speak, and it's like, you know, their way of doing it. Cliff, as I said before, I love Cliff. I really, really do. Like, I love Brendan Fraser growing up. I still love him now, and you know him. Just can it get a little boring after a while? Just like constantly swearing, constantly being an asshole, constantly, you know, just, you know, cursing every scene. It can be, yes, because that's like honestly a very basic form of humor. But it's the delivery, and it's just like every time he just says fuck, and it's like somehow a different delivery, a different tone, a different dialect. It just works so well. Like, I never get sick of it. I really, really don't. But in a way, Cliff is, I guess in a way, kind of like the moral compass, where like he's kind of like the normal-ish one, if that makes sense. Where like he becomes more of an asshole as the season goes along. He becomes more curseful, more like, you know, angerful as the season goes on. But in the beginning, he's more like calm. He's a little bit more like, not timid, but like he's just like, you know, he's the latest of the four. He kind of had like he's only been there for like 20, 25 years compared to the others who have been there for way longer than him. He's still kind of like pulling in from the gravitas of his situation, where like he lost his wife, he lost his kid, and now he's kind of stuck in this robot body, not really being able to like do anything that he's able to do before. He can't drive a car. He can't fuck. Can't eat food. Can't do shit. And then eventually wears the tears on you. You're like, yeah, you're alive, but is this really how you want to be living? And it kind of goes back to the conversation of, you know, let's say you're brain dead, or you lost mobility in your legs, or some dastardly incident that prevents you from fully being 100% able-bodied. Is it worth living? Yes or no? Like, if there's a way you can consciously keep going, but you won't be able to fully enjoy the manners you used to do before, like, is that really the right thing to do? Was that really it? And I think in that motif, where like, you know, he eventually kind of grows to accept it, as well as him understanding, like, you know, the things that are kind of, you know, let back from him, where, you know, you have him apparently realizing that his daughter's still alive, but Niles never really wanted to tell him that, because he didn't want to give him the idea that, you know, he's going to be able to like rekindle that, because again, you're in a robot body. It's not something that he eventually, you know, is able to really do about. But I think the core of his story is more tied to Jane, where he and Jane become an unlikely pairing, not romantically, but more like, you know, for him, he sees Jane as like the daughter that he's still raising, where he's still a father figure deep down. And as much as he wasn't able to really express much of it during his time, you know, able-bodied, you know, he is able to kind of like express his fatherly emotions to Jane throughout the series, where like he would always, you know, go and risk his entire life to save her. An idea being when Jane, during the Jane centric episode of the season where she gets trapped into her own subconscious, he actually is willing to go into it to save her. He's willing to do so much for her, and you know, Jane being the very violent character she is, she doesn't view Cliff as that at first, but she does at the same time. And you know, that's the complicated nature of like when you have 64 personalities, where like you can never truly be yourself because you have other things to worry about. You have other personas that are able to take over from the snap of your fingers. And considering all that Jane's been through, like, you know, she can't really trust anyone again. And especially that makes like the season's, you know, overall story, like once that unravels, it hurts more for those characters. Because again, like, you know, they were viewed to be in a protective zone. But in reality, once you figure out the truth behind nature, it kind of like destroys the very foundation of what you've been like, kind of like sleeping on for the past X amount of decades you've been there. And then moving into Jane, where like, you know, Jane being a very complex character, because, you know, it's not just her, it's also her other 63 personas, where like I said before, Jane is the primary persona. She's the one taking the wheel. She's usually the one walking the day-to-day, you know, kind of like, you know, going through the motions. And I think I'm able to like comprehend this more because I reviewed another show earlier this year called The Crowded Room, where that also dealt with multiple personalities. While that wasn't going too into depth as I was expecting to do, it still kind of introduced me to the concept of it again. And so when I was coming back to this show, because when I originally watched the show, I was more confused. I didn't know what the hell's going on. So Jane is the primary, but the little girl called Kay is the main. She was the original person, the original mind. And if you know something about psychology, is that multiple personalities tend to develop when a traumatic event occurs. The addition of another persona is created to protect, to shield the main persona from being hurt. Like the side persona, the other person, is the one taking that emotional trauma, so that the main persona doesn't have to deal with it. But unlike those stories where like at first they're unaware of it, Jane has always known, like, you know, that there's other person. Kay has always known that she has other persona, but she's willing to accept that so that she doesn't have to really endure the hardships of life, which is very, very, very bad in any day and age she was in. It's gotten back to the point where like she had to create 63 personas, and eventually an incident occurred in her life where one day some mad scientist gave her powers, gave all the freaking personas superpowers of some sort. And, you know, that makes her an even more dangerous force where, like, you know, you can't piss off any of them because either one of them can honestly kill you. But again, like her foundation is like, you know, she craves deep down to be part of the family. She wants a true father figure. Like, it's not something that's spoken. She never talks about it. But between her relationship with Niles and Cliff, it's apparent, where she views Niles as like, you know, this like second father that she never had, where like, okay, no matter what happens in life, I can always go back to Niles. I can always have a home to stay at, you know, as much as she doesn't in like to express it in like a natural loving way, because that's not her style. She still is able to be aware of that in the beginning, in the majority of the season, where like she wants to save the chief because he's done so much for her. And, you know, it's like, well, he's one of the only good people we'll get to more of that at the time, that actually I was able to let my guard down a little bit and actually to be a little bit more open. And some of the personas actually agreed with her that, yeah, Niles is a good person. Again, quotation marks, you know, that is what it is for a second. And then her relationship with Cliff, you know, her viewing Cliff as like, oh my God, here is a normal human being actually trying to make a connection with me. It's not something she's used to, because, yeah, people in life are assholes. They're pieces of shit. You really don't know who's gonna really pop into your life. You really don't know, and that makes it more. It makes it more sad for her, and that she doesn't want to accept it. She really doesn't want to believe Cliff's a good guy, and she tries all her best to like be an asshole. And I think the only other idea I can think of is like Gina from High School Musical, the music of the series, where like in the beginning she becomes this tough girl persona, that's like, you know, very an unapproachable person, because she doesn't want anyone to be close to her because she tends to move around. She's protecting her own feelings and herself from the pain that she could have endured by just pushing those people away. And that's kind of how Jane is, like, you know, she generally wants to have a relationship with Cliff, but it's like she doesn't want to be filled up with hope that, you know, Cliff will just be another asshole in the notches of assholes. Which, mind you, he is. Cliff is still an asshole, but emotionally, deep down, he does give a shit. He does care about it. And that was kind of like, you know, one of the beauties of their relationship throughout. Cyborg, you know, being the only superhero on the team, is kind of growing into more like, you know, the growing up, where like, you know, his life is kind of like sideways since the accident. So, you know, him being Cyborg in like the first few years has kind of been like an extension of his teen years, where like, you know, once he got used to his abilities and his powers, he was able to actually start to do some good with it. Actually, you know, teaming up with Star Labs and actually trying to go out there to the world, make a difference, you know, fighting bad guys, saving lives. You know, all the goody two-shoe stuff. But he's craved for independence. As you get older, you want independence from your parents to have more control over your life. Obviously, his case is a little bit different because like he has so many cybernetics in him that all have, you know, very fascinating programming that if the wrong person has access to it, he can literally kill the entire planet if he wants to. Like, that's just how dangerous he is. But he just wants to be able to like go forth in the world and make his own decisions, make his own, you know, mark his own stamp, like, you know, fully have somebody be 100% Cyborg, not with just the backing of his dad and you know, Star Labs. So him being involved here is just him trying to, like, you know, it's like the impression like when you leave high school, you go to college, where like you have this original idea of how things could go. Where, okay, I'm in college now, I'm gonna get straight A's, I'm gonna do the parties, I'm gonna be in a sorority, fraternity, I'm gonna be living the high life. And then once you have that taste of it, it's not exactly how you feel it. It really is. So him going out into his world, like starting up this team with the others, is not what's cracked up to be. It's not that easy. It really isn't. You know, having no funding, having, you know, working with bare bone material, it's not easy. It really is not. And he starts to feel the effects of that. But at the same time, being weighed down by like a prophecy that he's going to kill everyone hasn't been well to his psyche. Him learning that like the his accident would have been prevented, that his mom could have been alive, that he should have died. Like, you know, so many things eventually wear and tear on him. You know, he's still human. Like, you know, despite all the cybernetics he has on him, like, he's still a human being. And, you know, he still has his own day-to-day mental problems. And he's trying to figure out what is the right path for him? What is the right approach for him to take in life? And how is he going to be able to, like, you know, figure this all out in the end? Lastly, in terms of the team, you have Rita, where Rita, I think, is like, you know, she was the first one of all of them. She's the oldest. So next to Niles, she's kind of like, should be the first in command after Niles, but she's kind of in a way fragilely, you know, kind of got this, like, you know, false barrier around her, where it's kind of a double-sided, where we're like, she knows what her current situation is like, but she still is able to, like, kind of tell the truth. Like, when Cliff finally got his robot body, you know, Niles' order was like, hey, look, everyone, just keep it simple. Converse with him, make him feel like he's normal. That's it, just do that. Rita's like, nah, I'm gonna show him he's a robot. And he's like, so freaking like, you know, just like that. And at the same time, Rita kind of thinks a little bit too far of herself. We're like, for the next 70 years of their lives, she's made them watch all of her movies. That's kind of, which I'm like, I would get bored of a movie by the second time. How do they watch it for 70 years straight? I really don't know. I really don't know. It's like, you know, honestly, a really big mystery in my opinion. And I'm like, I don't know how any of them can, like, you know, hold up to it. I really don't know. But eventually, you know, I think she's the one that has the most emotional issues to deal with, because, again, she's had these problems for the longest. It's something that, you know, on top of her previous trauma before the accident and everything else, during her career in Hollywood, you know, just dealing with the realities of everything she's dealt for. She's been through a lot, and, you know, I'm not surprised she's trying to keep this, like, false positivity bubble on her, because she's just trying to keep everything going, keeping this, like, semblance of a life going for as many more years as, you know, as physically capable, because, you know, that's kind of all she's been living. That's all kind of how she's been trying to operate then and there. That, like, at the end of the day, like, I feel like she just doesn't know what she wants to do. She doesn't know where to go. Like, obviously, she can't go back. She can't just kind of press play again on her career. at the same time, like, she's kind of immortal, so I'm like, where else can she go? And then you have Niles, where, like, Niles is, like, a very complicated, more gritty version of Professor X, where he is smart, he is insightful, but at the end of the day, he kind of reminds me a little bit like Nick Fury. Where, like, he has good intentions, and he still does. It's just he has so many agendas going around that his agendas have agendas. Where his character is the one that unravels the most. Where in episode 1, you just view him as, like, he's just a kind soul who is very old and is willing to help, misfits off the street, give them, like, a free food, free water in this giant mansion of his. And no questions asked, just do some therapy sessions, and that's done. And then the more you get to see, where either it's something directly related to an outside force or something Mr. Nobody's causing, directly, you see more of him. And you realize what this man has done. And the first idea of, like, the cracks in Niles' cauldron was when we meet Kipling. When we meet, I forget, Mark Sheppard's character from Supernatural. Seeing him, where, like, he talks about a very different now, like, yo, you don't know Niles' cauldron, you really don't know. And I was going, like, okay, Niles, like, obviously, like, when you don't really truly know someone for so long, because, again, like, at the end of the day, like, you don't know someone until they fully reveal themselves to you, like, until they tell you, until you see it. You don't really know. Like, I know all my friends, but there is something else they could be hiding that maybe I will never know because they're not telling me that. They're not disclosing that with me. So, like, as the season progresses, you get to see more and more of the cracks with Niles. And as you progress more with the story, especially his standalone episode where his brief bits in the 40s where he went off and, tried to find this mystical creature, which he did, which is not what he was expecting at all, starting this whole other life and then having a daughter with her. And, kind of building the keys, kind of building, like, the more, like, the very vague clue, where, like, it's not something that's, like, very easy to figure out, but, like, once you reveal, it's like, oh, that kind of all makes sense, where, like, everything leads into the big reveal, where Niles caused all of their accidents. He purposely ruined the lives of 5 people because, and again, it's for the question of the greater good, where, like, his daughter he's a descendant of a very powerful line of mythological creature. Even with her human DNA, she still has the power to destroy the world if she wants to. And he needs to live, and his goal is to live at least one more day longer than her so that, at least the world can stay safe from her. It's not that he doesn't love his daughter, but because at the same time, like, he wants to protect the world. But, and it's really that shitty excuse that a lot of people do where, like, it's a small sacrifice for the greater good. But, like, you don't ruin 4 people's lives that were already, not the best. Where, Rita was going through a decline in her career. Larry was dealing with 2 lines that were slowly being torn apart because, both sides were fed up with him, like, not choosing. Cliff with his, infidelity, his very rocky marriage, and then Jane being emotionally abused as a child. Like, he took advantage of their situations to introduce these immortal elements that, well, yes, make them immortal so that he can, like, have more research to try and create his own permanent immortality serum. But at the same time, he's just prolonging their suffering. And it's like, it's a different thing where, like, if you ask them, I'm pretty sure they would have said no, but I'm like, the powers weren't the problem. It was the fact that you kept them alive so they have to deal with so much shit. Where Rita's stuck in this constant emotional, balance she has to do every single day for the rest of her life to stay afoot. You have Larry, who's stuck in bandages for the rest of his life, who's stuck with this negative spirit until he dies. Jane, who is fracturally mentally broken, that is dealing with just, like, more and more new trauma as she gets older. And you have Cliff, who lost his entire human body. Like, there's no surprise at the end of the day, like, everyone hates him. Like, they went from loving him to hating him in, like, a whole season. And I'm just like, that's just great storytelling. Like, I know it's possible, but, like, was a very well done build up. And, like, every episode builds up to that reveal. And everything they've done from that we known about the past to then knowing in that episode, it paid off everything in due course. And honestly, I give them total respect for that. I really do. Where it all paid off at the end of the day. And also shout out to Mr. Nobody for being such a fantastic antagonist. Where like he's so great. Like every line he spits out is just, it's gold. This is gold. It's just Alan Tudyk for you. His delivery is on point. My favorite scene from him is when at the end of episode 13, where like he's like binging the whole show on his iPad. And he's like, "Oh, finally, these fuckers are ready to fight me. It took a whole season, but they're finally ready to fight me. Like it's time for the big battle. It's time for the big finish line." And I'm just like, I love this man. I really, really do. And they did so well. Like we can only do him once. We put him away. We locked him away, and that's it. We're done with that. And it's just like it's one of those stories where like the natural progression of the story will continue. Like honestly, for me, when I do review season 2, 3, 4 down the line, and I don't think any of them can beat this. I really don't know. I just don't think so. This season was so well tight. It was so well balanced. All the check boxes were marking. I don't have a complaint. I really don't know. It's not a masterpiece of a season. It's not. I'm not gonna say that at all. Like I know when I say that, it's like, well, then there's a problem. There's something missing. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I just can't put my finger on it. It's just a great show. It really, really is. Where like every character is well developed. Every character gets an equal amount of story opportunity, both even in the mentor and the villain role. And you have such a great role in the supporting characters, in their own mythos, as well as at the same time the outside reaches of, yeah, there are other superheroes out there. There is a Superman. There is a Batman. There is a Flash. Like there's other heroes out there, but that's not the point. It's a unique world. It's such a perfect world where like, it exists in this larger space, but they're just doing their own thing. They're telling their own story. And I think that's just beautiful for me, in my opinion. Like it just works out so perfectly. So for now, for the time being, just to kind of, give it a loosey end. This season was great. It was really, really great. I really loved it so much. I love these characters. I love the villain. I love the story. Like everything was perfect. They made aware of like actual, taking real world issues, applying it to a superhero story, and it just made it all work. It really did. And like, it's one of those you just want to see more of it. And, that's kind of like, the impression where like, for me, if I didn't have to review these shows piece by piece, I would have just binged season 2 already because I love the show so much. I love these characters. But, for me, I'll be returning to this world very soon, just like not in a traditional format, so to speak. For the time being, for now, I'm giving this season my highest recommendations. Go binge it right now. You really should. It's 15 episodes. A little long, but honestly, every 15 episodes, every part of it is worth it. It really is. Everything builds into naturally the next part of the story. And, that's really great to hear from anyone where like, every episode is important. Every episode does count towards the larger goal of the story. It's crafting the story very well. So again, 2 thumbs up. Enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this first season of Doom Patrol. Let's have a talk down below. As always, but I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So for anyone that's been What's to Do from ActionX reviewing the first season of Doom Patrol. If you want to know what we're doing normally on What's to Do besides this Doom Patrol review, we'll be back in a couple days with the Doom Patrol Season 4, Episode 7 review. It's been a whole year, but we're back. We're going to be back in the world, Doom Patrol again after so long. New stuff. The last 6 episodes. Let's do this. Let's wrap this up. Let's end this home. Hopefully they have a great finale. Hopefully we get to see some great characters pop back up again for this being the last go around. Again, if you're unaware, this has been Wasn't Two from ActionX. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Like, favorite, share if you want to. Ring the bell and follow us on social media. But until we see each other again, for all you members of the fan patrol out there, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Like, favorite, share. I'm repeating my show, so stay safe out there. Be good to each other. And as always, peace out.